they were welcomed by Russians. All hell's breaking loose, but a man with many of the answers, of course, is Representative Brad Wenstrup. And Brad Wenstrup is on the Intelligence Committee, but he also is the chair of the subcommittee on the origins and response to COVID-19. And also we have the whistleblower who is releasing information about what the AG knew and what the AG didn't know, calling him mainly a liar at a meeting in which he announced, Weiss, the AG, announced that, we have, I can't proceed except in this district, which means all the stuff happening in Washington, I had no authority. But to get it all started, Congressman Brad Wenstrup, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show. First of all, as we sit here toward the end of June, what in the hell is going on with Prigozhin relative to the Wagner Group?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Belarus is a friend of Putin, and they have maintained their allegiance or alliance with Russia right now. So that's interesting that he's getting refuge there, but they're acting as the intermediary. I'm sure they like having that bit of authority, but I think this is the worst of Putin's days ever since he has been in charge there. But yeah, you have to think about the mercenaries themselves. I mean, they are not your patriots fighting a war. They are for hire. They're just hired killers. They're not fighting for Mother Russia or something like that. They don't have patriotic bones necessarily in their body when it comes to the work that they're doing. So in some ways, what we started to see is it's kind of like a union wanting to go on strike. And they were reaching out to the human resources team, right? And saying, hey, things aren't good on the job here. And so, they turned themselves around and went right into Russia. And this is something that all of the Russian people can see. So this is one you just don't spin out of very easily when it's in the public view. And as Putin called it, treason. And if these people, when they come through these towns, are being welcomed, that tells you where we are right now. But the Russian people, they see it. And the United States and NATO and all of those that would like to see Russia get out of Ukraine and get us back to a peaceful state in that area, we got to use this, if nothing else, for the psychological operations on the Russian people. I don't really think the Russian people have been in favor of this very much from the beginning. You're taking people out of prison to go serve, and everyone else is conscripted. So this is really going to be bad for Putin in so many ways. I hear he's trying to meet with leaders of what would be his allies, and he's going to have a tough sell with them. Remember, they've been trying to supply him with weapons, etc., and they may just say, your time is up. I don't know, but it's going to be a tough spin for him to try and win them back after we just saw what happened.
It's an amazing thing to watch when these mercenaries using, I guess, secondhand Russian army equipment under the orders of Prigozhin somehow begins in March toward Moscow. And then on Friday night, you had a circumstance where CNN, live from Moscow, had regular Russian soldiers guarding Moscow against this invasion that was being welcomed by the Russian people. I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, what am I watching here? Would this be like the Pennsylvania National Guard marching on Washington, D.C.? Is that a good analogy or not?
Well, I don't think that they train themselves to do the things that mercenaries do in the way that they do it. But yeah, to a degree, it's a component of what was Putin's forces, and they just decided they've had enough and didn't see this going in the right direction, I guess, and said this has got to stop, or at least we're stopping, and we're going to come and talk to you. Yeah. And they didn't seem to hesitate, but that's their mentality. So again, this isn't a war where people in the Soviet Union, in Russia, their children are gaining something from this. It's not something where it's like, hey, when we defeat Ukraine, right, which we attacked, our life will be so much better. No, their lives are worse because of this. And there's nothing better about it going forward, and there hasn't been. And they failed miserably. They failed militarily miserably when they thought they would walk right in. Well, hello, Vladimir Putin, here you are.
How does this play? Can you think, you're on the Intelligence Committee, how does this play out? Because right now, we have North Korea sending missiles over Japan. We have Iran threatening nuclear war with Israel. We have the circumstances in China According to the intelligence community, they're targeting Taiwan. We have a president who's mentally feeble that can't make decisions. The staff around him is doing it for him. We have Russia that was on the march. Now it appears to be a bloodless coup may take place. And in Russia, all the oligarchs are done because they've lost their billions of dollars. They're all angry. You have the Russian military, which is completely dysfunctional. You have a part of the Russian military, 5,000 to 8,000 men, getting ready to attack Moscow. And of course, Joe Biden was at Camp David. Now he's supposedly back in the White House. We'll see what happens. I look around and I'm thinking, my God, and we haven't talked at all about the reaction of the Intelligence Committee to COVID. We haven't spoken. We want to talk about the whistleblowers who are calling the whistle and blowing the whistle on the FBI and the Department of Justice. The southern border remains wide open. But just from the Russian perspective, can you play out the next few weeks and months? If Vladimir Putin leaves power and Prigozhin takes over, allegedly, he's worse than Putin. There are people that are worse than Putin. How does it play out? Get out your Ouija board. What's going to happen?
Well, one thing that I might just think about is, one is Putin leaving, and that's going to have to be the first step, and hopefully withdrawing from Ukraine. When you talk about those other countries that are poised to do more things, such as North Korea, Iran, and China, for that matter, just better really assess how strong you might think you are, because Putin learned a lesson there. And also, you have to understand what happens when you take on people that are fighting for freedom, that are actually fighting for something, as opposed to just serving a dictator who wants to take more land, more property, more value. And there's a big difference in that. And we see that time and time again throughout history.
So we know, I mean, the last 4 or 5 days have been interesting. I don't know how it plays out. One of the reports this morning I saw indicated that Putin may go one of two ways. One, withdraw from Ukraine, which appears to be impossible. The other thing is to attack the nuclear facilities in the Ukraine, to cause a European crisis and or use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Either way, I mean, the best thing would happen for him to leave Ukraine saying, "I made him." I can't conceive that's possible and him remaining in power. The other thing is to do what he did to the dams, which is attack the nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, and or use a nuclear weapon. Wouldn't that be a disaster?
It certainly would be. He's got the capability of creating a disaster. He's already created one. He can certainly create more. But the tide is turning against him. And I would hope that if he does step down or disappear in some way, whoever takes over will learn from the lessons of Vladimir Putin and maybe decide it's time to create some peace around the world.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen there. Let's turn to page 2, the whistleblower. Everywhere I look, and you have information on this, the whistleblower from the IRS who is blowing the whistle on Merrick Garland, who said that the Weiss, the assistant U.S. attorney in Delaware, had complete authority. That's not exactly what the whistleblower is saying. Obviously, we're looking at monster corruption at the top of the federal government, which many have talked about. What information, since you're on the Intelligence Committee, can you share about these whistleblowers that are coming forward reporting the lies of Merrick Garland and indirectly the FBI, Christopher Wray? What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, I am on the Intelligence Committee, but this has come through Ways and Means Committee at this point. And the reason being is Ways and Means has jurisdiction over tax in the IRS. And so whistleblowers came to Congress, voluntarily came to Congress, in particular, to both sides of the aisle. They insisted on talking to both sides of the aisle in the House of Representatives on the Ways and Means Committee. So the Democrats have been involved with this since the beginning. Just last week, though, we had to have a closed session where we discuss the allegations and decide if we want to make them public. The Democrats were opposed to the release of the whistleblower allegations, which, of course, is not necessarily a surprise. But we have oversights. Our agencies are not infallible, and that's what we have to understand. And Congress has a responsibility, and that includes the intelligence community as well. They're not infallible, and they may have motives that are not necessarily in the best interest of honesty and integrity. So in the name of truth and justice, it seems that we have a two-tiered system. You know, one of the things I want to point out with Hunter Biden in the charges against him is that he has a plea deal, supposedly, but the judge has to accept that, as I understand it. The Democrats are saying we shouldn't release any of this. We need to have an investigation first. Well, we are investigating, and I think the judge in this case should investigate as well. But as far as Mr. Weiss, a whistleblower, engaged with them, and remember, Mr. Weiss, he doesn't decide these things. And what happened, unfortunately, what we're hearing is that he wanted to take this up the chain the way they normally do, the whistleblowers, that is. And the IRS chain of command decided they would refer to the Department of Justice. And he said, but if the normal procedures were followed, they would have executed search warrants themselves, conducted interviews, and served document requests. But the IRS chain of command said, no, take it over to DOJ. And so Weiss, in March of 22, goes to the prosecuting team. And again, he doesn't decide these things. And he referred to the U.S. Attorney in D.C. They declined it. Then he sought a special counsel in the spring of 22. That was denied. Then he went to the Central District of California in the fall of 22. That was denied. On all three of these cases, they were Biden appointees that were doing the denying. So, you know, here's a guy, one, he, you know, evaded his taxes, that's a felony, if guilty, committed fraud, made false statements, another felony if guilty, and a willful failure to file or pay or supply information. That's a misdemeanor. That's the only thing they're charging him on. And I was told by some people that were at the state dinner, as we had the Indian Prime Minister in town, there were only 2 Republicans invited that I know of, but they said Hunter Biden's walking around in his tux like everything's all good. Everything's great. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And so I hope that the judge ultimately doesn't accept this plea deal, if that's still in play, which I think it is. And you've got to take a look at what these whistleblowers' allegations are and say there is no way, this is not justice by any means when you compare. I'll tell you, one of the members of Ways and Means even pointed out, you know, Pete Rose didn't declare some of his income from signing autographs and he went to jail. Right. You know, but look at the things that Hunter Biden has done. And, you know, you've seen the quote that came from the WhatsApp message where he's telling Henry Zhao in China, you know, I'm with the big guy, right? I didn't say big guy. I'm here with my father, and he'd like to understand why the commitment hasn't been fulfilled. I want this done, basically. Saying, I'm sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Good Lord, what more do you need to launch a full-scale investigation and try and get to truth? But that's where we are in America today, Bill, and I'm not one that was conspiracy theorist, but there's just too much that is in plain English that you've got to say, what are we doing? So, you know, and I'm one who sat through the hypocrisy of the Russian collusion investigation, being on Intel committee and all those types of things, the impeachment, et cetera, where the committee became the impeachment committee rather than the intelligence committee. We have a lot of cleaning up to do, Bill. This one deserves a lot of attention right now.
Everyone says on this, it's up to the federal judge on sentencing. You can't bind his hands, which is exactly operated the way it should operate, but it doesn't. Let's face it, everyone in the country who is going to be charged with an IRS tax violation should demand the Biden deal, which is I can have sex with underage prostitutes, snort cocaine, fleece millions of dollars all around the world, and my father sitting next to me, i.e. the Vice President Joe Biden, where's the $5 million? I want it now. Not accurately file any tax returns, lie, cheat, and steal. And guess what? Nothing happens. Pete Rose didn't get it. All those rappers, Hannity's had a bunch on this week talking about there's thousands of Americans sitting in prison on gun law violations and not filing tax returns. In his case, over $3 million of unreported income, and nothing happened. Congressman, I tell you what, I'm up against the clock already. I mean, we haven't got to the origins of COVID. We got to do that again. I'm watching Injustice on steroids, and Brad Wenstrup, at some point, let's do it real soon, what the intelligence community says about the origins of COVID, but the whistleblowers and the Hunter Biden deal and the possible coup in Russia is also terribly important. But Congressman, once again, go ahead.
Yeah, those take priority right now, and they're going to be plenty more follow-up on
Martha
on
Stewart goes to federal prison for some tax return. Pete Rose didn't report cash on some signing his name, and here's Hunter Biden fleecing the Chinese, the Ukrainians, and the Yugoslavians, getting millions of dollars, having all these shell companies structuring deals, and all over the Biden family, and nobody can figure it out. We don't know what to do. This is complicated. Well, we got to run, really got to run now, but Brad Wenstrup, once again, God bless you, and thank you for coming on the Bill Cunningham Show. Thank you.
You bet, Bill. Take